I am Alex. I'm from Higher Horizons. What we aim to do is make sure that you young people listening now have the most information you can to try and make the best choices you can. But this isn't about us, this is about chemistry. So I'm going to start telling you a little bit about my educational background. So from my GCSEs, I went on to do A-levels in chemistry, English language and literature, German, and then an AS level in Spanish. Now, you might notice that they're a little bit different when it comes to a science course. So that's something that I'm going to come on to briefly. But after my A-levels, I went on to the University of Leeds and studied an MChem degree in chemistry, which was an integrated master's degree. So I studied for 4 years and came out at the end with a master's degree. And then I went on to Cardiff University to do a PhD in chemistry. On the left, you can see me there having a very good day at my graduation. On the right, I've just handed in my PhD thesis. So these are both quite momentous days. And now, as I mentioned, my A-level choices were a little bit different compared to what you traditionally expect. So when I was looking for universities to apply for, a lot of the time I had a face looking slightly like this. And the reason for that is when I looked on a lot of websites for different universities and different courses, I was told that I needed maths, and I didn't have maths. I didn't enjoy maths particularly at GCSE, so I originally wanted to do languages at university, and then thought, actually, no, I'll go on with chemistry. But the problem there was, as I said, a lot of universities wanted either maths or an additional science, and I didn't have those. And that's where one of my first points comes up, is that some entry requirements can, and the can is underlined because it's can be, they may be flexible. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you've got a university and the offer is 3 Bs, but they want maths and chemistry. If you're going with ABB, but you don't have maths, you might still be considered. Equally, if you're trying to apply for the University of Oxford to study chemistry, but you're predicted maybe Cs, then it's not necessarily the right decision. So some entry requirements are flexible, but you need to be sensible about the ones that you think could be flexible. And here's my next point, one that Vittorio might be very happy about. Admissions tutors are people too. Your applications are looked at by people. Your personal statement is read by a person. These people can see your considerations, your subjects, your background, your drive to do the subject. And they will take that into consideration. It's not purely, oh, you're missing that one math subject, or you're missing maybe an additional science. They will often still consider your application. Admissions tutors want to make sure that you're right for their university, but also that they're right for you. So they're really keen to make sure that everyone's making the correct decision. And we're in a situation at the moment which is very different to when I applied to university. Given the current circumstance, open days, physical open days, are kind of off the table for the minute. Whereas now, universities are pumping a lot of resources into virtual open days. Virtual open days where there will be academic members of staff present for you to ask questions to. Normally, you'd have to go to the university to do that. So I'm based currently in South Birmingham. If I wanted to go to the University of Edinburgh, it's a long way. But with the virtual open days now, they're at the other side of the computer screen. So all of these questions you might have for a lot of universities, you can get answered through these virtual open days. But one thing that I'd like to talk about, as I said, is tips and tricks to make the most of your choices. So there's a lot of things that you might, on face value, take for granted when it comes to a university course. And some of the most important things, I think, are coming up on screen now. Lab work, for example, is part of every university degree, every chemistry university degree, but they do them differently. So let's talk a little bit about that. Labs were, hands down, my favourite part of my degree. I loved seeing that science happen in front of me. But as you can see here, I had the time of my life in my labs. But as I said, every course does them differently. So sometimes they're a standalone module. For example, a few years ago when I was at Leeds, so it might be different now, my labs module was worth 25% of my year as a whole. Some universities will have a lab component in every individual module. So it all goes towards your assessment for the year, but they do it in slightly different ways. Also, different universities and different years of the courses will have different amounts of lab time. So that's also something worth considering, because if you really, really enjoy being in a lab like I did, try and opt for a university that has more lab hours associated with it. If you already know you don't enjoy it, then go for a course with less hours associated with it. There's all these sorts of things to think about that really add up to the experience that you get. And lastly, some of you may have already seen things about accreditation by the Royal Society of Chemistry. Now that just means that you've met different criteria to be accredited, but Vittorio might talk a bit more about this later. And now for a course to be accredited, quite often you'll have to do an extended research project in either your third for your bachelor's or your fourth year for your master's. And that can be about 8 weeks for a bachelor's course and a bit longer over the whole year for the master's course. So if you're particularly keen on maybe a career in research or further study, you might want to look out for those accredited degrees. And the next thing I want to talk about is assessment. Now, assessment might not be something that you initially think about, but I will be very, very honest here. I struggled because my course had a lot of exams. Chemistry used to be a very exam-heavy subject. A lot of your assessment would be on a final exam. And now I'm not good at exams. I panic under pressure. Everything goes out of my head. I can't remember a thing. So coursework was a lot better for me. But my course didn't have that much coursework. It had a lot of exams. So if you know that you're better at coursework than you are at exams, talk to the members of staff on these virtual open days and talk about the assessment. Are there presentations? Are they more assessed through labs? Is there more coursework? All of these little things that make sure that you can do the best you possibly can at that university. As I said, labs will go towards your mark, but again, it's making sure that if you like exams, go for an exam-heavy course. If you prefer coursework or other types of assessment, try and lean towards something a little bit different. Because it's really important over those 3 or 4 years that you're performing in the best way you can. And I understand, I spent 4 years struggling with exams, and I know that I would have got a better classification of degree if I'd have had one that encompassed more coursework. So that's really, really something to keep an eye out for to make sure that you're getting the most from your course. Next up is student satisfaction. Now, a lot of university league tables will compare universities against each other based on their research. And now their research is something that goes on almost behind the scenes a bit for you when you're considering an undergraduate degree. But it's a really important part of universities. But for you, looking for an undergraduate course, that might not be the best thing to look for. So you can consider things such as the Teaching Excellence Framework, which looks at universities and compares their teaching, and they're ranked on bronze, silver, and gold. So they give you a bit of an indication of the quality of teaching that you can expect at that university. Some other websites, such as the Times Higher Education and Complete University Guide, give student satisfaction scores as part of their ranking. You can click and it will rank all of the options by their student satisfaction. So you can see how students felt about the course at that university. And that can give you a real good indication as to whether that's somewhere that you think you'd like to study. And next up, scholarships and bursaries. Now, scholarships and bursaries are additional funding that some universities have available. They help ease those traditional financial burdens that some people associate with university. And now, I come from a low-income household, and I was also the first in my family to go to university. And those are 2 criteria that meant I was eligible for extra funding. I also got a scholarship for getting 3 A's at A-level, but I didn't get 3 A's at A-level. The thing is with scholarships is they're often pots of money that are available, but not necessarily available for the university to keep if they don't give them out. So sometimes, and this isn't always, the criteria for a scholarship can be a bit more flexible, just like how sometimes admissions can be a bit more flexible. There's lots of things that just because they're in black and white on a website, they're not necessarily black and white. There's always different levels to them. The thing with scholarships is you're not automatically entered into them. You have to dig around on the website and find out what sorts of scholarships and bursaries that university offers. Because if you've got two universities and you can't choose between them, but one might give you some additional scholarships or bursaries to help you along, that might be a bit more tempting. And the Complete University Guide and Save the Student, their websites have lists of all scholarships and bursaries. But don't worry, I'll include some of these in some follow-up resources when this goes up on the website. But there's other things to consider when going to university, apart from just those things that I pointed out there. And some of them are coming up now. Optional modules are quite an interesting one. So as we know, my A-levels weren't that sciencey, and I really wanted to keep up my German. I wanted to carry on practicing, and I wanted that to count towards my degree. So in my first year, I was able to do what's called an elective, which was outside of my school of chemistry in German. So that went towards then my mark for the year. Some universities allow you to do this. So if you've got a subject area that you particularly want to keep up with, you might see whether you can choose a module in that in the first year. But some universities don't allow you to do this because they're more interested in you really bettering your chemistry knowledge. So if you're keen on other subject areas as well, it's worth having a look at whether your university would allow you to do them. Alternatively, consider joint honours programs, because a joint honours program then might allow you to keep your horizons a bit wider. Closer to home or further away? This is an age-old question for universities. Where do I go? Do you want to stay close to home? Do you want to flee to the other end of the country? The closest I looked was Nottingham, which was about an hour away. And between Leeds and Birmingham, where I eventually went, it's about 2.5 hours drive. It can be nice being further away, but at the same time, if you want to go home for the weekend, or if you want to visit people, it can be nice to be a bit nearer. The course content. Now, this is a really, really important one to me, because if you're studying for 3 or 4 years, you want to make sure that you're interested in what you're learning about. Some universities will offer courses in green chemistry, sustainable, renewable chemistry. Others might focus more on medicinal chemistry and biological chemistry. It depends on the expertise of the people in that department. So these are sorts of things that you can ask about and see on those virtual open days. So really try and make the most of them. My last important point here is partner universities. Now, quite often as part of your degree program, sometimes you'll be allowed to go and study abroad for a year. And universities quite often have specific universities in other countries that they will work with. So if you know particularly you want to go to one country, check if they work with that university. Check if the university you're applying to already has links there. Or if you just want to keep your options open, then see what countries are available for you to go and study in. Because these little things might make you choose one more so than the other. We've come to the end of my main content, so I've got a few take-home messages for you here. And the first one is make use of those virtual open days. I know I've said about it a lot, but you've got the opportunity now to experience so many universities without leaving the environment that you're in. And there's so many different questions that you might have that you can get answered now quickly and from the other side of the screen. Think about what you want from university. And this is obviously more than just the degree. Think, do you want to go to a university that has lots of extracurricular activities and societies? Do you want to go to one close to home, further from home? Do you want one with lots of labs? There's a lot of different things that make up a university experience. It's more than just the course. even though the course is a massively important part of it, because it's what you're studying for 3 or 4 years for. But think about the other little things that add together to make it what it is. And lastly, don't get caught up in league tables. As I said, the criteria that different league tables are built on may or may not be applicable to you. But you'll be, after university, when it comes to the job market, you'll probably be looked on more favourably as a first-class degree from a university that's not necessarily as high up in the league tables than if you don't perform so well, but went to a university that's in the top 5 in the country. Make sure you're looking at a course that you can perform the best in through the different methods of assessment, and also that you're interested in, because if you're interested in it, you're more likely to do well in it. Lastly, we have a website here, higherhorizons.co.uk/ask, where all of our officers, members of staff like me that have been to university, are there to help answer your questions. You'll find me on there. So if you've got any questions about anything that I might have said that you think are further down the line, log on to the website and you'll find me and a question will go directly to me. I really want to thank you for firstly listening to me, but also being enthusiastic about your education and really putting yourself out to come along to things such as these, to learn more about the different opportunities that you've got available.
So it's a great pleasure to have a chance to talk to you about chemistry today and how chemistry is sort of dealt with within universities. So I'm going to entitle this talk sort of Studying Chemistry Courses at University, because I'm not going to just talk about the university element. I'm also going to talk about chemistry as a subject to get you thinking about why it is quite an important degree subject. So my name is Vittorio Caprio. I am the Admissions Tutor for Chemistry Programs at Manchester Metropolitan. I'm also, most of my time, an organic chemist, so I'm a senior lecturer in organic and medicinal chemistry as well, and do research and teaching in that area. If you do want to contact me, there's my address at the bottom there, and feel free to do so. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you've got at any time. So I would like to start off by getting you to think about why chemistry is quite an important degree subject, and moving away from it as a science to start with. I mean, we're all drawn to chemistry, I imagine, because we quite like the idea of playing around with molecules and the idea of color changes and flashes and bangs and all those kind of dramatic sort of observations that we associate with chemistry. But do we ever stop to think about how important chemistry actually is to the way we lead our lives? And this impinges on employability and other things as well. It's all part of a whole package in a sense. The average UK household here, I've said, spends, and I'm sure it's a lot more than £30 a week these days, on things that are derived from chemistry. We can think of the obvious things like pharmaceuticals, for instance, painkillers, etc. Cosmetics and bathroom items, etc. But you also think about cleaning fluids and all these other things that we use in our kitchens. Think about the materials that you wear, the materials that you use around your house. The list is absolutely endless, and it's hard to imagine life and sort of civilization as we know it without chemistry in some form or another. So it really does intrude into every aspect of our everyday life. And as I said, this is just from an interest point of view, but think about how that actually does reflect on employability. The other thing that we do need to think about, and again, this reflects on employability and how useful chemistry is that it's what's known as a central science. And so chemistry impinges on lots of other sciences. It overlaps an awful lot with biology. A lot of the research that I do these days is actually at the sort of the interface between chemistry and biology. There's a massive overlap with medicine. So you think about pharmaceuticals, well, they're essentially small molecules. So all the drugs that we take and so on, these are actually mostly organic chemicals of one form or another. Environmental science, so monitoring climate change and pollutants and all that kind of research, is a lot of analytical chemistry. So earth science, so we think of geology and so on. Well, if you want to really think about it specifically and in basic terms, then really geology is just inorganic chemistry that sort of goes on over a very long period of time. There's a huge overlap with physics and mathematics in terms of studying how reactions work, but also in developing new materials, lasers, all these kind of things. Again, this is chemistry and physics, but there's a huge overlap with materials. There's a huge overlap these days with coming up with renewable energies and fuel cells and so on and so forth. And I've said in this bullet point here, chemistry is essential. So we've just basically mentioned food, clothing, shelter, health. Chemistry has been unfortunately associated with an awful lot of problems that afflict our world these days, but it's going to be central to how we deal with these problems as well. We're talking about viruses at the moment. Well, apart from vaccines, the other way of treating these conditions are, of course, with small molecules. And sooner or later, we will probably find something that will alleviate symptoms of these kind of conditions. So chemistry is central there as well. And as I say, crucial to providing new solutions. If you are interested in tackling some of today's problems, then being a chemist is a good way to go about it. Again, this is something that reflects on the potential employability of chemists, but it is vitally important to the UK sector. We're told very often that we're not much of a manufacturing country these days, but that certainly isn't true as far as chemistry goes. The chemical industry is the nation's largest manufacturing exporter, and you can see some of the data that I've put here. We're talking many, many billions that chemistry is worth to the UK economy, especially the pharmaceutical industry. So that's probably one of our biggest sort of manufacturing sectors. So we make and export vast amounts of pharmaceuticals. These are small molecules. It's organic chemistry and medicinal chemistry, for instance, that goes into the design of these. If people talk to you about, oh, are you interested in healthcare? Do you want to get into that kind of arena? You immediately think of becoming of doing medicine, or you think of going down the routes of pharmacy, down the road of pharmacy. But it's actually chemists, organic chemists that manufacture compounds. They're the ones that design drugs. They're the ones that make them. So if that's the sort of thing that you're into, is actually inventing medicines and drugs, then actually it's chemistry. It's something that you perhaps would like to think about. I don't know if you can see on the bottom right, but if you look at all the manufacturing industries in the UK, we've got food products, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, rubber, etc. And chemistry forms a big part of quite a few of those industries in one way or another. So this is one of the most important slides, I think, for getting across how useful chemistry is to you guys, apart from just the fact that it's interesting. It is, and Alex has mentioned this as well, it's a degree that gives you loads of what we call transferable skills, and I've listed some here. Problem solving, numeracy, communication skills, etc. And these are vital to pretty much any industry you can think of. So these are some career options I've actually taken off the Manchester Metropolitan website. And if you do go onto our website, you'll see that there's a whole list of various options that we think chemists and our graduates have actually pursued in the past. So research and development, and that's in sort of the obvious industrial sector. So you can think of fine chemicals, think of pharmaceuticals, materials, and so on. But there's things like lab technicians, pharmacology, so studying how biology of how drugs work and how our bodies are managed. Obviously, chemical engineering. Teaching is a massive employer, forensics, and various sort of analyst types situations like water quality, etc. But what we really, and I've put this in a box here, really need to think about is that chemistry is a gateway to pretty much any job you can think of that's a sort of graduate level employment. So conservation science, again, that's obvious in science communication, but think of this patent examiner, any aspects of law, IT, finance, local central government. These are all these are all employability sectors that regularly do employ chemists. And that really is something to think about. Chemistry is such a flexible degree. You don't even have to be a scientist if you don't want to. And you know, every year, loads of graduates in chemistry do go off into other disciplines as well. I've put at the bottom of the slide here that an awful lot of graduates actually do enroll in further study, whether that's MSc or PhD. And Alex, of course, told you about his journey where he actually did pursue a PhD. And it's something that's worth thinking about as well, because chemistry, as I said, is such a vital research discipline. An awful lot of students get hooked on the subject and do continue into even further study. I'll come back to this idea of research in a moment. These are graduate destinations from Manchester Metropolitan, just to give you an example of the kind of jobs. These are real destinations some of our students went to. Reckitt Benckiser at the top here, Agilent are companies that deal with instrumentation, AstraZeneca, Lilly. I mean, these are all major companies here. This is just this brief snapshot of some of the companies our graduates have gone to work with. On the left here are some of the type of actual jobs that they did in those companies. So synthetic organic chemists making molecules, formulating various things that could be cosmetics or formulating drugs, for instance, technicians, as I said, teaching. So technical sales here isn't necessarily science, but you know, is a sector that chemists do go into. MScs, PhDs, we've had students go to Cambridge, Nottingham. I mean, I think that's worth mentioning is the fact that with a chemistry degree, you can really travel, not only around the country, but you can see people have gone to the US to study. I actually spent 10 years of my career in New Zealand. After my PhD, a lot of students do go off and do what's called postdoctoral work, and I did some in Auckland. I went for a year and actually ended up staying for 10 years. It's where I started an academic career. So you never know where you might end up. Chemistry is it's a global discipline, and actually English is the international language of science and chemistry. So doing a chemistry degree in English means you can pretty much go all over the world to pursue your career options. Okay, so moving away a little bit from sort of banging a drum about why chemistry is such an important discipline and how it can really work for you. What sort of things can you actually study? Because it isn't just straight chemistry. So all universities that offer chemistry, because not all do, but most do, will offer general chemistry degrees, BSc honours chemistry, etc. But there are a lot of specialised options these days as well for you to choose from. Would also say that Alex did mention that he did what was called an MChem, which is a 4-year option. I'll mention that a little bit more about that in a moment, but essentially the final year of that comes with quite a big chunk of a research project. Alex also mentioned that there are universities, and most of them do offer a 4-year degree with your industry, or they do offer study abroad options as well. We offer both at MMU. So for instance, BSc honours chemistry, you can do the study abroad option as well in Australasia, America, or Europe, depending on where you'd like to go. What I've done here is just cherry picked a couple of universities. I've shown what we do in the bottom right here. So we offer pharmaceutical chemistry along with chemistry, but you can see there is quite a mixture. So Nottingham, for instance, do biological chem, medicinal and biological. Manchester do chemistry with medicinal again. Bristol do chemical physics. Again, this reflects the overlap of chemistry with other subjects. I think you can see that pharmaceutical or medicinal is quite an popular option, and again that reflects how important chemistry is to drug discovery, and how important it is to our economy as well. And as I said, drug discovery is a chemistry subject. It's not something you get into via pharmacy or doing a medicine degree. Inventing drugs is chemistry. Building on that, looking at things more specifically, and Alex did mention, I think, a bit about how degrees are organised. What would you expect to get? All years will have lab techniques options. We call them lab techniques at Manchester Met, but it's lab classes, and Alex has talked about thoughts around lab classes. And all universities will offer a significant proportion of these. You can see that at first year there's going to be introductions is sort of core material, but there will be specialist units as well, especially if you are studying for a more specialized degree, e.g. drug discovery. I'll put options in really as a question mark here. Most universities do offer options as well, so you can tailor your degree a little bit. You might choose an option in, say, green chemistry, or you might want a little bit of drug discovery, etc., or a little bit of physics. We'll also say in year one that Alex mentioned he didn't do maths. Maths underpins some physical chemistry. We don't get heavily involved in maths, but you do need it to, say, thermodynamics and a little bit of quantum mechanics and so on. So most universities do offer an introductory maths course as part of first year to get everybody up to speed with maths. Year two is further material in core subjects and again further specialist units. Year three, you've seen here that I've added a project unit. Alex again mentioned this idea of doing projects, and projects is something that most universities do in third year. That essentially is going to be, in combination with a member of staff, and it will be a real research project that you will run yourself, as I said, with a member of staff. And it's a very exciting option to pick up. So further core material, that'll actually be advanced core material, I should say, at third year, and there may be some options, but the project unit is something that everyone gets a chance to do. Now, the MChem option, I said I'd come back to, that is something that you can elect to do when you apply to university. At Manchester Met, actually, we offer MChem to all our students who get 60% or above in the end of year two. So you can put that decision off. It's a 4-year route. It's, as I said, so 4 years, and it's an enhanced project. So you get sort of frontiers material and lectures. This real cutting edge chemistry beyond textbooks is taught to you. And you get this extended research project, which takes up half your year. And it's very good if you are considering thinking about taking a research-based career, because it gives you a really good idea of what research is all about. So that's pretty much what I want to say. I hope I've covered the bases and persuaded you that chemistry, it might not sound a really fancy degree these days, because there's lots of degrees that will promise you a pathway to riches and so on. But chemistry, it's been around now for over 100 years, and I think it's stood the test of time, and it's a very strong degree. It's a demanding degree. It's something that is great if you do want to stay into science. You can use it as a stepping stone into other sciences if you want, but you can use it also to get into other careers. And it is a very exciting option, as I said, if you think about what you can do with a chemistry degree in terms of research. So I've labelled this final slide, things to look out for, and Alex gave a few hints and tips as well about what to think about when you're applying to university. The first one is obvious. Think about the entry grades and whether they match what you think you could achieve. Alex mentioned RSC accreditation. Make sure your university has RSC accreditation. You probably don't know much about the RSC, which is the Royal Society of Chemistry. It is our professional body, and most of us are members. They come and accredit us. It's a bit like the Michelin star of chemistry, as I often joke. Every 3 or 4 or 5 years, Royal Society of Chemistry people come round, they evaluate our course. Is it up to a national, international level? Are we assessing to the right standards? Do we have enough lab classes to, again, the requisite number? Are we teaching the right material and so on? Really, every university, whether they're Russell Group or not, if they have RSC accreditation, that is a good stamp of approval that they're teaching you to the right level. So make sure that the university you're applying to does have it. And I would say also, Alex did mention this a little bit, you might think that being research active isn't particularly relevant to being taught as an undergraduate, but I think it is. It's important that you are taught by research active staff. They bring enthusiasm to the teaching. Don't forget they're making discoveries in the areas that you're being taught. They're not teaching out of the textbook, they're more than likely writing the textbooks. So for instance, our staff here at MMU, we carry out research into designing new reactions, catalysis, drug discovery, what we call chemical biology. One of our postdocs here studying new fuel cell technology, for instance. We do research into environmental chemistry and climate change, on top of all, teaching core material and organic, inorganic, physical, etc. And that sort of underpins the teaching that we do. And, you know, that's the difference between being at a university and being at a college or a school, is that the people that are teaching you are making discoveries in those areas. And finally, you know, do have a look at the stats, have a look at what students have said about us in the National Student Survey. We don't want to live and die by these statistics. Alex is absolutely correct. See what vibe you get from a university. If you really can, I know it's difficult at the moment because we're all living under lockdown and so on, virtual open days, but if you ever do get the chance to go and visit a university, do try and do so, because I think that's, you know, it's important to see what feeling you get about a place. I think that's more important than how high up we are on a league table, or whether we get 99.99% every year in the NSS. It's where you're comfortable with, and if it does, click the boxes for you.